Buzzcut shaved face jump scare. There's some crazy stuff going on with regards to the US government and Israel. Not only are they supporting Israel's genocide in Gaza, but they are also now allegedly helping Israeli officials charged with sex crimes escape the U.S. into Israel. An Israeli government official, Artiom Alexandrovich, was charged last week with soliciting sex from a 15-year-old girl in Las Vegas. He brought a condom to a planned meetup with it was an undercover agent, I guess. Alexandrovich is a division head at the Israel National Cyber Directorate. Before it was deleted from the internet, his LinkedIn listed him as one of the developers of Israel's Cyber Iron Dome, and it had footage of him working with Benjamin Netanyahu directly. The court documents from his arrest show that he all but admitted to the crime. After his arrest, he posted bail, went back to his hotel room, and 2 days later, he flew back to Israel. Upon his arrival, Israeli officials downplayed the arrest. They initially referred to it as mere questioning that was quickly resolved and carried no political implications. The allegation is floating around that the U.S. intervened to help him escape, and this is something the U.S. State Department denies, as well as the Clark County District Attorney Steve Wolfson. He's the one overseeing the case, and he claimed that an unconditional release after posting bail is standard procedure with this specific charge. But there is some evidence pointing to potential special treatment from the U.S. government here, and this is an ongoing story, so things could change, but what we know right now is very troubling. So first, in order for restrictions to be imposed on travel, a criminal complaint must be filed with a court, and sources close to the case say that out of the 8 suspects that were jailed, Alexandrovich was the only one that did not receive a criminal complaint filing. He never interacted with the judge, and it kept the door open for his flight, which he obviously took. The court documents also show that Alexandrovich was interviewed by both the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, meaning that federal agents were aware of who he was, that he was an Israeli official visiting the U.S. and an obvious potential flight risk, but they let him off anyways, which is especially odd considering that posting bail is not an automatic process. Several factors are usually taken into account, and is this person booked on a flight leaving the country 2 days from now would normally be one of those factors. It was also just reported today in Haaretz that Israel's police and its representatives in the U.S. were updated in real time during his questioning. The other strange thing here is that the top U.S. federal prosecutor in Nevada confirmed that her office is leaving the case to local authorities and mentioned nothing about a federal investigation, which is an issue, obviously, when the guy left the country. Local authorities can't really do much about a guy that's in Israel. This greatly raises the possibility that he just doesn't come back. The date is set for the 27th of August, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. But that prosecutor, whose name is Sigal Shatta, also happens to be a Trump-appointed far-right racist who's called her black political opponents hood rats, monkeys, and ghetto, and called for them to be lynched, and has been deemed unfit for office by a bipartisan coalition of over 100 judges. Most relevant to this story, though, is that not only does she hate black people, she also hates Palestinians and is a fanatical genocidal Zionist supporter of Israel, the country in which she was born. Before she deleted her Twitter account just days ago, you could find her on there calling for Gaza to be wiped off the map and calling the entire population there terrorists and animals. After deleting the account, she started posting on a new one, blaming the Israeli alleged pedophile Alexandrovich's escape back to Israel on liberals. A liberal district attorney and state court judge in Nevada failed to require an alleged child molester to surrender his passport, which allowed him to flee our country. The attorney general just called me outraged, and she also called the FBI director. The individual who fled our country should have had his passport seized by the state authorities. He must be returned immediately to face justice.
The radical left is burning down our country and attacking Jews in the streets, and Ilhan Omar is fanning the flames. I'm Sigal Shatta, an Israeli-born lawyer running to be America's #1 conservative attorney general.
Now, this story is getting barely any coverage, from mainstream Western outlets at least. There's a big list of news outlets that have covered this story, and notably absent from it are the largest outlets in the West, like the New York Times, the Washington Post, BBC, NBC, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, CNN. None of them have covered this story. It's pretty crazy, to be honest. Like, just imagine if this were a Russian official accused of sex crimes against children being released with potentially U.S. government assistance and allowed to return to Russia. This would be a front page story on all of these outlets. This is something I was able to see with Ground News, which happens to be the sponsor of today's video. Ground News is a platform that has a bunch of helpful tools for identifying media bias and, in this case, selective coverage. Interestingly, one place it is getting a lot of coverage is in Israel. Israeli outlets like Haaretz, Ynet, the Jerusalem Post, and the Times of Israel have all done stories on it. The Israeli media being more honest about unflattering stories involving Israel has been a theme of of the last 2 years of Israel's genocide in Gaza. Haaretz has reported on stories like the Hannibal Directive, which was Israel's order resulting in the killing of a significant number of its own civilians on October 7th, and the Gaza killing fields, which is the daily IDF-backed massacres at U.S. government-contracted so-called humanitarian aid sites. Outlets like the New York Times have routinely whitewashed or just not covered these sorts of stories. Go to ground.news/Noah to stay fully informed and see through the bias. Save 40% for unlimited access to the Vantage plan through my link this month only. Another thing you'll notice is that this story is getting a lot of right-wing coverage, and that's coming from the surge in anti-Trump, right-wing, anti-Israel people. Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, she's a Nazi, she's an anti-Semite, but she's been really riding the wave of hatred towards Israel, rightfully placed hatred, given the whole genocide thing. But she's one of the loudest voices banging the drum about this story, along with various other anti-Semites that are covering the story in order to be racist towards Jewish people. The issue here is, of course, Israel and its relationship with the US, not Jewish people. And that conflation being made by anti-Semites is just a way to fuel that racist lie. But it's also a conflation made by supporters of Israel when they claim to represent all Jewish people, when they smear critics of the genocidal state as Jew haters, and when they literally rewrite the definition of anti-Semitism to include these slights against that genocidal state. There's a long history of Nazis helping sustain the Israeli project, and this is just the latest version of that. If it's anti-Semitic to protest genocide, then that means something about Jewish people, and Judaism is genocidal, which is, well, that's anti-Semitic, right? There is a precedent to what's happening here, which is accused child predators fleeing from the United States to Israel. A 2020 CBS investigation found that over 60 accused pedophiles have abused right of return laws to gain citizenship in Israel and avoid extradition to the states they're fleeing from. The organization tracking this has limited resources, so the true number is probably much higher than that. And there's been some pretty high-profile cases of this, like Malka Leifer, who was facing trial for 70 sex offense charges as the former principal of a Jewish religious school in Australia. She fled before a warrant could be issued and basically lived freely in Israel until 2021, so 13 years. In this case, there was alleged interference by Israeli officials. Israel's deputy health minister, Yaakov Litzman, was suspected to have helped prevent Leifer's extradition by pressuring doctors to falsify psychiatric evaluations, deeming Leifer unfit to stand trial. We know the Israeli officials are already lying by omission about Alexandrovich's alleged child sex crimes, but the extent of the US's involvement and the nature of a potential cover-up is still unknown. So we'll probably keep covering this, but for now, that's where the story is. And I don't know, crazier things have happened. They're fully supporting Israel in its current genocide bipartisanly. So in comparison, something like this is just a small favor for a close friend and ally and only democracy in the Middle East, Israel.
As Israel's strongest ally and friend, you put your arm around your friend when there's something like this going on and talk about what we're prepared to do together.
All right, that's it for the video. Just a quick one. Got a few big ones coming soon. They're just taking a little while to write. So tune into Chris Kunzler's stream Friday the 22nd at 10 a.m. Pacific time to watch us hang out and talk about whatever. Okay, bye.